Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN The Hub's Fantasy Baseball Strategy Show every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here as always with Kasey, Vlad to the Bone, Shienvold, and Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and welcome to MFSN. I'm excited. It's baseball. We're talking shortstops. It's going to be a long, fun show. It's not going to be that long, but we have a lot of insight with shortstops, and there's a lot of them, guys, right? There's a lot of good shortstops. Tell me there's not.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think of it as a very deep position, but this happens every time. I look at a position and I'm like, actually, I wouldn't like to fall
7. I don't want anybody.
Right, exactly. And now that doesn't mean there aren't values to be had, because there definitely are, and we're going to talk about that.
There's values. There's guys who I think will be busts. We'll talk about that. And there's guys that I know you guys all feel there's like one guy that's devoted like the number one shortstop. I disagree. And I can't wait to talk about it.
Ooh, okay. Well, we're going to get into that. But before we do that, let's cover a little bit of news. Let's cover what's happened. It's in the last couple of days. Because spring training has a lot of things go on. First of all, there's injuries. And some of them are season altering because these players are out for a long time. Sometimes you see production happening and you wonder, are people gaining a foothold in a certain role? Are people losing a certain role? A guy like Jared Kalenic, is this real or not? We got to talk about these things. So let's talk about some of the news. Kasey, Ross, jump in with any news item that you think is pretty noteworthy in the last couple of days.
Well, the biggest news at this point are injuries. I think there's a lot of position battles that we'll talk about throughout the next 4 or 5 weeks before everybody drafts and the start of the regular season. But when you have players like Frankie Montas is going to be out for the year, Tyler Glass now, they just said, is going to start the season on the IL and is gone for 8 weeks. Gavin Lux, we're talking about shortstops today. This guy was supposed to be the starting shortstop in a great lineup, and he's a top prospect. Like, there were big things expected. Blew out his ACL, done for the year. So those are probably the most relevant things for fantasy sports. That's for sure.
Ross, anything that Kasey missed in his roundup
Juan
of main
Soto's
injuries?
not playing. He's not playing spring training right now. He has a sore calf. I don't know if that's going to be a major problem, but if you're a Soto holder, you should for sure take a look and make sure the guy's okay. I don't know if he's going to be dropped a little bit in draft order. I think he'll be okay, but hopefully he'll start playing next week. We'll see what happens. And and Musgrove was in the weight room doing the weight kettle, right? Kasey,
the kettlebell,
the kettlebell. I used to do that, and it fell on his toe, and he broke his toe. And that's it for a pitcher, guys. That's a major injury. I mean, that's like that can mess him up for more than a month, maybe 2 months. So we got to watch out for him. I mean, he's a huge inning burner for the Padres. So
and people really do underestimate injuries like that. They think, oh, well, the pitcher, as long as it's not your arm, but you got to plant with those feet, and that's how you pick up a lot of that speed. That's a very tough injury. So he's going to be out, we think, about 2 months, you think?
I mean, they said a month, but to be safe, I would say 6 weeks case.
Okay, now, at the same time, this does pose an opportunity. It's the kind of opportunity Kasey knows that I always like. I have so many injured pitchers after the draft. It's ridiculous. And usually it doesn't pay off, by the way. So don't follow me in that.
Well, it did for the first handful of years. It just hasn't recently.
It's true. It just hasn't recently. Okay, thanks for that roundup, guys. Let's jump in with shortstops. We think of it as a deeper position, and I think it actually is a pretty deep position still. But I want to hear who's in that first tier for you. That's how we've been starting a lot of these shows. Who makes up that first tier, and where does that drop-off begin?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm not saying Trey Turner is my number one shortstop. Kasey, Dan, who's the number one hitter when it comes to base hits? Base hits. Singles, doubles, triples, home runs. The past 3 years combined, who has the most hits of any player in Major League Baseball?
This is an interesting question. I don't know.
Past 3 years combined?
And
is it past 3 years?
Does it include the 2022 season?
Please tell me you're not talking about Xander Bogaerts.
Shienvold, wake up!
Please tell me you're not talking about Xander Bogaerts.
I'm talking about Bo Bichette, okay? That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, just
so Bo Bichette, I mean, look at his numbers. It's amazing.
He's a monster.
Monster, no press in Toronto, gets stolen bases.
No
You know who his
American
dad
press
is, right?
in Toronto.
What? I mean, no press at all in Toronto.
No
Seriously.
American press. Let's
Okay,
not
fine.
discount the Canadians. They're people too.
So again, my top tier is Bo Bichette. He's my number one. I know you guys are both think I'm crazy saying, not putting Turner there,
I
but
don't think you're crazy. I just think you're wrong, but we'll talk about it.
that's fine. That's fine. You
Or
can have your
we think
opinion.
you're
It's a free
crazy and it
country.
has nothing to do with Bo Bichette.
So Bo Bichette 1, Turner 2, Tatis Jr. 3. Well, I actually have Corey Seager 3 because I feel with the shift being illegal now, he could probably hit around 300 this year. So I have Seager 3, Tatis 4, and then Kasey Shienvold's favorite player, Witt Jr. 5.
Okay, so and are these all in the same tier, Ross, or is there a drop-off?
That's a great question. I will put them in. I will say yes. I'll put all 5 of those in the same tier just because I feel they'll have the same stats. They'll be very competitive all year, battling against each other with stolen bases, home runs, RBIs, runs. All 5 of these guys will have great stats. And yes, this is my top 5 tier. I will take it. Yes.
Okay, now, by the way, one of the reasons we mentioned tiers, we talk about this a lot in terms of strategy. When you're trying to figure out who to take, if you look at these different tiers and see where the big drop-offs are, that's where you can find a lot of value because you can say, at this position, I can wait because look at all these guys that are left. So Ross is saying those are there's 5 in the top tier.
Top 5 in my top tier. Yes. Kasey
I have
Shienvold,
4.
I can't wait to hear this.
I have 4 in my top tier. Not
I can't
5.
wait to hear this.
And you left one out entirely from.
Yeah,
that's fine. This is my.
This is
I
part
know
of the
who I
fun.
left out.
I
and
have,
you
I
can
have
say it.
5
Go
in
ahead.
my top tier, and 2 of them are not ones he mentioned.
That's fine, guys.
I think I can guess who they are. All right, Case. Who are your top 5?
My top 5 are Trey Turner.
Okay.
At 1. I have Bichette at 2, although it's like 1A. And one of the things Ross forgot to mention, which is also completely relevant, is Toronto was already a hitter's park, and they're going to be playing 81 games there. They moved the fence in 10 feet.
Moved it in. Hold on. I talked to the listen.
So his home runs could go even higher. What?
They moved it in on right field and left field, not in center field. So
they moved the field.
In that ballpark. Some pitchers I don't know. It's just a weird place.
It just helps him from a fantasy perspective to not have to hit the ball as far to get a home run.
He's not a pull hitter, but that's
I have Bobby Witt, as he said, my favorite player. I have him at number 3.
Yep.
Again, I have Fernando Tatis Jr. at 4. Although he's going to be an outfielder, he still qualifies at center. I mean, his value is going to fluctuate more than anybody's, I think, over the next 6 to 8 weeks based on how he performs when he comes back. But you can't deny the talent. Like, you can't deny the numbers he put up when healthy. I have Francisco Lindor at 5. I don't have Seager in my top 5 or in that first tier, not because I don't think he's going to be a 300 hitter with 30 home runs. He doesn't run at all. And all of those other guys are going to get you possibly more than 20 stolen bases. And that is a huge difference maker with me and the difference between the top tier and that next tier.
So I'm with Kasey on the stolen base front, and that's actually why I have Trey Turner first. He's just going to steal more bases than Bichette, and that makes his floor even safer. It's very close. I have Bichette definitely right next second, and then I have Fernando Tatis. I actually have those two. It's almost like Turner, Bichette, and Tatis are almost in a tier by themselves. Lindor is weird because he could be in that top tier because he does run. He hits for power. He's hitting for average again. I think he's fully back. So I have those 4.
He's a Met. Every time he's Met.
He was a Met last year when he did what he did.
He started slow last year. I don't know if you guys remember.
Okay.
If he started slow and you look at his numbers, that's scary. What if he doesn't start slow?
I'm scared.
So I have those in my top 4. Now, listen, Bobby Witt Jr. I had kind of categorized as the third base in my mind because that's a shallower position. If I did have to rank him, though, I would put him 5. I think he can climb up into this tier, but he's just got more risk to him. So I have him slightly below. Then I think there's a big drop-off where there's some really interesting players. I have them ranked this way. I have Xander Bogaerts 6th. I have Corey Seager 7. Ross, you're going to hate me for this. Wander Franco, I have 8.
I'm like 12th.
I know. I'm surprised you have him.
We'll
as high
talk
as
about
that.
Wanda. Let's talk about him. I think this could be a breakout year for him. And if you're betting that this will be his breakout year, you could be right. I don't know. He's supposed to be this wonder boy, and he's not.
But that's why I couldn't
close.
put him below 8. It just didn't feel like his.
I don't have
upside
him
is-
in my top 10. No,
I have him. I don't either. I have him 12.
I think there are certain players who are fantastic baseball players that might not translate into fantasy production or fantasy. He's going to bat 280 to 300, which is great. Maybe over 300. He could hit 20 to 25 home runs. He doesn't run that much.
Nope.
If he runs
not
at
yet.
all.
Not that
And
many
so-
runs scored. Not that many.
He was hurt last year, and he has to prove he can stay healthy. That's the other thing. So
Yeah. Let me ask you this,
just
though.
feel
If
there's
you
so
take-
many better shortstops than him right now.
I don't know if there are so many, but
Okay, but if you take Bobby Witt Jr. out, and let's say you take, I'm assuming Gunnar Henderson is one of the people who
I have
pushed
him at
him out.
third base. Am I crazy?
Okay, I have him as third base also.
I have him at third base. Yeah,
because I was
All
going
right.
to put him in this thing, but I said, you know what? There's so many great shortstops, and I think his natural position is third base, so that's why I kept him there.
All right.
I actually, despite not having him ranked in my top 10, I have Wander Franco listed as a bust.
That's funny. I have him listed as a
no.
sleeper.
I think this could be his breakout year, guys.
I have him as a sleeper. And you know what? It's totally
He's not a
legit to
sleeper.
think-
This guy has the most press of anybody I've ever heard in my life.
But that's the amazing thing. He even with
He's not
that,
a sleeper.
well, look at what Casey's saying. He's saying he's a bust. If anybody's saying he's a bust, he can be a sleeper
Well,
because
Casey's a hater. Casey can't have Witt as
Casey
his
used
favorite.
to love Wander Franco. He talked him up so
Oh,
much.
that was this guy. Your relative Andrew talked about him like he was the next coming of whatever.
I do not remember Andrew talking about him.
Totally. But I mean, Wander Franco. I remember when he came up. I remember all the press he got, and he's done.
He
nothing.
wasn't a sleeper then. Absolutely not. But right now, you guys aren't even ranking him in your top 12.
Look,
I'm not.
And I think
there
he
are
could finish
right.
6.
But keep going on some names, and I'll tell you why these guys are better. Keep going.
Okay, well, the next guy is another young guy who could put together a great season. O'Neal Cruz.
Yep.
The only problem with that is let me just talk about O'Neal Cruz. I love him, 6'7".
I know what you're going to talk about.
Better arm than Casey Shienvold, a lot better. Throws the ball almost 100 miles an hour to first base. He's a stud.
Only 40 miles an hour faster than Casey.
The only problem is he plays
50.
in Pittsburgh, and the lineup in Pittsburgh.
I don't think I can get it from short to first anymore.
Yeah, but the lineup in Pittsburgh, guys, is very weak, and it's not a good baseball team. So it's
You're
a good
totally
player
right.
on a bad team that's not going to score many runs, not have many RBIs, but he'll hit 290, 300. But he's a monster. I'm not saying he's bad.
I mean, you're totally right, Ross. This is why he's at the back end, though. I mean, he's a power
Well,
speed guy.
you missed like 3 other guys ahead of him.
Well, who did I miss?
Who did you miss ahead of?
I don't know. This guy check these numbers. Willie Adames of Milwaukee. Did you look at his numbers, Casey Shienvold?
I looked at his numbers.
What's his batting average from last year?
238.
246.
238.
How many home runs and how many RBIs, Casey?
I don't know, like 27 home runs
Like 30.
and 9.
Come on.
31
I'm
homers,
guessing.
98 RBIs, and
Come
8
on,
stolen
Casey.
bases.
Wake up. Wake up, Casey.
Oh, look, he's got great numbers.
I
but look,
have him as a value pick. I'm not
Guys,
arguing against
Value pick.
O'Neal Cruz is just better.
The guy's a
look how
monster.
red Ross is getting. Okay, hold on. Listen, you guys are talking about Willie Adames, but we haven't even mentioned Dansby Swanson. If you want to
I'm
look
not
at
there
numbers,
yet.
okay.
I have him ranked 9th, Dansby Swanson.
I don't have him in my top 10. I don't buy Dansby Swanson. You know why?
Why?
If you look at his split stats, the last two months of the year, he was terrible. And in fact, it trends along the way he has been all along. He was a top prospect, but it seems to me we should check his BABIP. I don't even know how you're supposed to say that name, but it tells whether people are getting lucky or not. So, Case, look up while we're sitting here. Look up Dansby Swanson and his BABIP from last year.
Okay, let's talk about your.
I want to find out if he was getting lucky. Go ahead,
Let's
Ross.
talk about your econ teacher who was the American League batting champion, I think more than once. Tim Anderson, who was hurt last year. Okay, he was hurt. I mean, this guy, he doesn't really hit for power, but he gets on base and scores runs. And that White Sox lineup is potent. They have a lot of really good young hitters on that team. And I just feel your econ teacher, Tim Anderson, is going to have a real up year if he can stay healthy. What do you guys think?
I agree. Actually, I had him 5th because Bobby Witt Jr. I didn't have on the list. So I actually did have him 5th. So I do have him above O'Neal Cruz. And you're totally right. The Pirates are going to suck. They're not going to produce a lot of runs. That depresses his value a lot. So I have O'Neal Cruz ranked quite high considering that, and I understand that. But when I looked at the people compared to him, I wasn't that worried about it. Now,
how about Jeremy Piven? I'm just kidding. Jeremy Pena.
Oh, I love Jeremy Piven.
That's funny.
He had
an unbelievable season. Plays in a team that's solid, unbelievable, and he gets on base and he scores runs. I mean,
Jeremy Pena, to me, there's not a ton of difference between Jeremy Pena.
He was number 8 on my list.
He's 10 on mine. I don't think there's a huge difference between him and Corey Seager, honestly. It could go either way.
Except power. I mean, Corey hits the ball a little further, but that's okay.
For now, I mean, Jeremy Pena is young.
This is why the shortstop position is so deep. And we didn't even talk about Carlos Correa. We didn't talk about who I love? This is one of my like sleeper picks. This is a real sleeper pick, Kasey Shienvold, not Wando Franco. Dan had Wando Franco as that's honestly somebody that's young that had a horrible start last season, but then he came back and he was a stud. And he plays another guy that plays on a bad team, but this guy can run, he can field, and he can hit. CJ Abrams of the Nationals. This guy is a real stud. I'm telling you this right now. And he gets no press. He plays in a horrible team. I mean, the team overall is horrible.
I think,
but this guy can hit. I'm telling you.
I agree with you. He was a top prospect. He's like in the 91st percentile in sprint speed. So we know he can run. The problem was he doesn't elevate the ball at all. I mean, the elimination of the shift is going to help him, I think, to get some more ground ball hits. But it's a horrible team and it's a bad ballpark for right-handed batters. I'm not denying. I have him as a value pick. I don't think he's a sleeper per se. I think he could be value later in the round. When I think of sleeper, I think somebody who can be one of the better players on your team that people aren't talking about.
I actually think that's how we should start thinking about it. We should reserve sleeper for somebody that people really aren't talking about. So I'll remove Wander Franco from that because people are obviously talking about him. I think that CJ Abrams is really interesting because, Ross, you think I should not keep him in our keeper league. And Kasey felt that he was my biggest mistake of the draft last year. But here you are both talking him up.
I mean, I don't know if he's a keeper in a six keeper league. I
have 6 keepers.
I think you can draft him because, again,
keep in mind, my 6th keeper is going to be Josh Hader. So I'm not risking that much if I want to just keep him.
I mean, I like CJ Abrams. It's just shortstop is so deep, guys, and there's so much great talent. I mean, Carlos Correa, we haven't talked about, and Marcus Semien plays shortstop too. I mean, there's so many good shortstops out there.
At shortstop?
He does qualify at shortstop. I would play him at second base.
I would too, but I'm saying he's another guy. And Bogarts, you mentioned him before too. I mean, he's another guy that could have a big year with that great lineup in San Diego. I know you're shaking your head, but I'm just telling you, you have an unbelievable lineup in San Diego.
Kasey. I would pencil him in for 300 batting average, at close to 100 RBIs, close to
100 runs scored. 100 runs scored. I'll say it right now.
Yeah. But I don't think he'll hit more than 15 to 20 home runs, and he doesn't run.
That's okay.
But you know what? When you look at position eligibility,
but that's value. But Bogarts is such a name that you have to draft him too high to make it worth the pick.
Exactly.
I agree with that.
Good point.
I think we all agree with that. But here's the thing: with position eligibility, shortstop seriously is like the deepest position. I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's insane how we haven't even talked about some really great players. I mean, Ahmed Rosario, he's one of my value picks. I don't think he's that great. He doesn't have good plate discipline.
What was his numbers last year? I mean, they were good. That's why I'm asking.
86 runs, 11 homers, 71 RBIs, 18 steals, and a 283 batting average.
Exactly.
His plate discipline is not great, so that's probably about what you're going to get. But hopefully his power starts to come up, and if he runs a bit more, this is a value pick for me. He could be great.
Value. I mentioned Abrams as a value pick. My other one is Nico Horner. This is a guy, he stole 21 bags. He's never going to hit more than 10 to 15 home runs. But if you can get a player late in the draft who's going to bat 290, score a bunch of runs and steal you 20 some bags and plays multiple positions, because I think he's second and short. Like, that's value. That's somebody you can stick on your bench. You're not going to draft him as the difference maker, but you put him on your bench. And then if somebody gets hurt in the middle infield or you need steals, you can put him in utility and just get somebody who's going to steal you a bag or two every week.
Alternatively, if you are hurting in a position and you've got him as your backup, you can trade your starting shortstop and maybe play with somebody like that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we haven't even talked about Mondesi, who is Casey's probably least favorite
let's
player.
talk about Mondesi.
No, I'm going to end up drafting him. I'm addicted to him. Like, I just have to own it. But
addicted to speed.
I don't know what position he's going to play right now. I don't know. He's not going to start the year.
He qualifies at short already. So
I know, but they're saying
short and
Hernandez is going to be the starting shortstop in Boston.
Yeah, but you know what, Ross? That's an advantage. Mondesi's going to end up with multiple position eligibility because he's going to play everywhere.
Listen,
as long as
he probably will start the season
healthy
on the IR. He's probably not going to be healthy.
No, I know. But if you could tell me he was going to be healthy for the whole year, he's in tier 1 for me.
I'm not. No argument. No argument here. I think Mondesi is a triple threat. I think the guy can steal bases, hit home runs, and I think he can hit RBIs.
To me, that makes him a value pick, though, because he's ranked.
I'm worried about playing time. I mentioned this before.
Right, but 211 feet, you can get him after the
tuning. You want guys to play every day. You don't want guys to play 4 days a week.
Let's keep in mind, if they're daily lineup leagues, that's very different.
Yeah, weekly lineup, he doesn't have much.
Weekly lineup league, Mondesi is almost undraftable.
Right, but I'm saying you're going to be on your computer right before game time and seeing if he's playing or not. I mean, you're going to do that every day.
Yes,
I think the answer is yes for me and Casey.
Yes.
You're with the patient. Excuse me, I'll be right back. I got to check something, and they something
Sometimes
I make sure I don't have a patient between like 6:50 and 7:05. Like that's when.
And listen, I mean, if we do, they can wait. It's fine. No, I'm kidding. That's not true. Not true. Okay, another value pick I have. I wonder what you guys think about this. This true value pick because he's not a sleeper.
I'm listening.
But Elvis Andrus, he keeps putting up numbers.
How old is that guy?
Is he a White Sox?
How old is Elvis Andrus? I mean, this guy's been in the league for 50 years.
It feels like he's been around forever, but I remember. I guess I've been playing for a long time because I remember when he first came in.
Yeah, with Texas.
He had 17 homers and 18 stolen bases, and it's not at all the first time he's done things like this. In fact, he's really only had like 2 bad seasons. What he used to do is run all the time and not hit for power.
Yeah. I think, showing how old I am and how much I overstudied, I think he was part of the trade from Atlanta to Texas that brought Mark Teixeira to the Braves. Texas.
Wow, Mark Teixeira. Wow.
I think
that's some history.
Casey, look up how old Elvis is. I'm curious. Not Elvis Presley.
Let's see if Elvis has left the building. Now,
that boy good.
All right. I do have a couple of other sleepers to mention.
I'm listening.
I don't know if this guy qualifies as a sleeper because everybody's excited about him, but I do think Ezekiel Tovar could be pretty huge.
I have him as a sleeper. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Playing in Colorado. Again, shortstop is such a deep position, but I would love to draft him on the back end. And if he starts breaking out, you can trade your starting shortstop and trust that he's going to be good.
He will turn 35 by the end of the season, by the way.
Not Tovar. We're talking about
not Tovar. We're talking about
Tovar.
Elvis.
He's not 100% making the team. I read about him. Let's make sure he's on the 40-man roster to start the season before you draft. I'm worried about that.
But I still think he probably is worth a back-end roster spot.
Okay, back-end. Okay.
I wouldn't use more than one spot.
But I think if they give him the job, that's what makes him a sleeper.
They give him the job.
If they give him the job, he's got plate discipline, pop, and speed. He's not going to hit more than 20 home runs. Maybe in Colorado he gets a few extra to fly out of there, but the guy can steal you 30 bags and bat 315 pretty easily.
Guys, the ball flies out of that place. You guys remember back in the day when Colorado first started? It was them and the Marlins started the same year.
It was in the 1800s when Colorado started.
And you remember, no one really knew the baseball flies a lot further in Colorado than other ballparks, and everybody thought Dante Bichette and all these other players were Vinny Castilla. All these guys were unbelievable. They thought they
were pretty good, but
they were
Walker
good. I'm not saying anything bad about these guys again, but they thought all these guys were 40 home runs, 120 RBIs. They thought this was because they're great players, and it was because they were playing in Colorado.
They're
Remember
like,
the
it's
big
weird. There's
cat?
all these good hitters and terrible
How-
pitchers. What's
How
happening?
good was Andres Galarraga in Colorado
Oh,
back in the day?
I used to love
He was
Galarraga.
Miguel Cabrera, in Colorado. Like he really was. He was a Triple Crown threat every year.
He was a
Couldn't
monster, and I
run
remember
for
playing fantasy baseball back then. I
anything.
always drafted a lot of
Well,
Rockies.
we had never seen anything like that before the Rockies. There just wasn't. There wasn't a
No,
park
there was
like
no
that.
ballpark where you can go and all of a sudden you become a 30 home run hitter. Before that, you're hitting 10 home runs a
Cincinnati.
season. There's nothing like that.
It's somewhat close in Cincinnati. Okay,
No, it's not even close. Please.
it's maybe 50%. Okay,
Ball flies out of Colorado, but that we're talking about Tovar now. I agree. I think this kid can get some playing time. I think he'll be like a top 10 fantasy shortstop. I totally agree with you.
one other deep sleeper. I hesitate to mention him because I don't want you to steal him from me.
Yeah.
He's not going to be good for the first part of the season because he's injured. But Royce Lewis is going to be good when he's back.
Minnesota. Yeah, it's just a question
he was
of
so good when he was playing. Stick him on your IL. It's a great pick.
I've been in some drafts. He's not been drafted in any of the leagues I've been in. So you guys,
He's not going to get drafted in a lot of leagues.
no. He's one you draft with your last pick, put him on your IL spot,
or just put him on your watch list and just watch and but you got to get ahead of the curve because
I'm going to name somebody here who's
I'm
not
going to name
going to
somebody
be,
after you. Go ahead.
be up for the first part of the year, but when he comes up, he's one of those players who can carry you through the second half of the season, and that's Anthony Volpe of the Yankees. I know I'm a Yankee homer, but this guy is like talent through and through. I think Peraza is going to come up, be the starting shortstop at the start of the year. But I think if Volpe is raking in double or triple A and running, they're not going to be able to keep him out. I think Gleyber Torres is going to end up traded sometime before the trade deadline so that they can make room for both of these kids in that lineup because he's that good.
I don't think you're in the minority with that. Go ahead.
The Reds this last in the offseason, they got rid of Farmer, their shortstop. And the reason they did that is because they have this young shortstop named De La Cruz.
Ellie De La Cruz.
De La Cruz. Hopefully he'll make the team. This guy's their number one guy in their minor league system. This guy can hit. He's a great fielder. Skinny kid, but he has power. I love this kid. He has speed. I just don't know if he's going to make the ball club. I don't know if he's a year away. I have no idea what Cincinnati's doing. We'll find out. He does in spring training, but he's one of my sleeper guys, and he probably won't be drafted in any of your leagues. But just keep an eye on him. That's how I got.
As long as Cincinnati knows what Cincinnati's doing, they'll be okay.
They have no idea. I mean,
that is still questionable. They have been the lowest attended team, I think, of the last 3 years in major leagues.
No,
like
Oakland has. You're totally don't have that stat right. It's Oakland A's are the least attendance.
Well,
everybody goes there with bags over their head. It's kind of like the New Orleans Saints,
guys
of the 90s.
Listen,
it's just pathetic.
Think about how deep shortstop is. We probably talked about 24 different players in a 12-team league. So many of these guys are going to be sitting on your bench, and it's important to think about these numbers in the aggregate because what ends up happening is if you overvalue these guys, you're going to be picking them too early. There's 24 of them. There's tons of them. So
and
I think you want to wait.
You kind of say if you don't get one of the top tier shortstops, you're not going to lose much value between the 7th shortstop and the 12th shortstop.
This is one of those positions that's so deep. I mean, when I think about busts, we haven't really talked about busts yet. I'm going to talk about my busts. Both of them are the reason I have them as busts is not because I think they're bad players or they don't fit in these top 24 or even in the top 10. It's because where you have to pay for them is too much.
Okay.
Xander Bogaerts is a great example of that. He's not as good as the other players that are getting selected around there, and he's not that much better than a lot of the players really deep down the list to me. So I look at him as a bust in terms of his value. I think he's going to be a good player. Dansby Swanson, I also don't think is going to be a bad player, but you're going to have to pick him way ahead of the curve. He was the 14th ranked player in Yahoo leagues last year. That alone is going to shoot him up draft boards just because there's some people who don't pay attention enough. They look at the numbers in the aggregate and they think, oh, I got a steal here. You probably got a bust to me. What do you guys think of my busts?
I agree with them both. I mean,
I agree. I think both of them are overrated, but I think 100% you're correct.
I love it. I silenced you both. Okay, tell me your busts. We'll go from there. Okay,
Well,
who do you have?
I had Xander Bogaerts because, again, I'm not doubting that he's a top 10 shortstop in baseball, but fantasy is sometimes different than reality when it comes to sports. Just the way I kind of look at Wander Franco, I had him listed as a bust too, because he does have hype behind him still, because he was the number one prospect. He was all over the magazines. He came up in that first game and didn't he hit like a 3-run home run in Fenway? Like,
Yep.
everything was roses for him. But at the end of the day, he could also be a breakout. That's the beauty of him. But I see him as a 280 to 300 hitter who's going to hit you 20 to 25 home runs, maybe drive in 90 runs, score 90 runs, which are all great numbers. But if you have to spend like he's a tier 1 or right on the cusp of tier 1 shortstop, that's way too expensive for me.
Yeah, and I just don't think the ceiling is there. Ross, who are
Really?
your busts?
Well, I'm going to say Carlos Correa. After all the craziness that happened during the offseason, I just feel that he'll feel a lot of pressure signing that big deal, and I just don't feel he'll do okay. He'll do average, but not what he's worth. Not even close. So Correa, 1. 2, you guys may think I'm crazy, but Bobby Witt Jr., I don't think he'll have a big year. I think he'll be drafted way too high.
The hype is out of control. So
his batting average. His batting average won't hit 250. He'll stay under 250. He'll have the stolen bases. He might have some power. But
so let me ask you this, Ross, and it's because I don't disagree with you. I had him listed in my bust in third baseman last week, so I'm not saying that the potential for disaster.
He's still a top 10 guy.
Would you rather have a 245 average with 30 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and 80 to 80, let's say 85 runs batted in and runs scored because he's in Kansas City? It's not a very good lineup. Or would you rather have Corey Seager, who's going to bat you 320 with 30 bags and drive in 100 if he stays healthy, but has 0 steals?
I'd rather go for the guy like Corey Seager, who plays in Texas. He has a lot of protection.
And I guess that's
Kansas City's lineup's not bad either, but
no, his lineup's pretty good.
I mean, Kansas City, if you look at their lineup, it's a pretty good team. They're not. The problem is their pitching. That's the whole problem. Kansas City.
It's interesting if we put the two next to him. They're both 4 category contributors, right? Not like with Corey Seager, the 5th category is steals. With Bobby Witt Jr., the 5th category looks like it's going to be batting average. And the way I look at it, the way I justify Bobby Witt above him in this is batting average has become less valuable.
Right.
Steals continues to be more valuable because like most people are going to have at least 5 people in their lineup who are batting 260 or below just because of the way batting averages is. Maybe that'll change, but not many people will have a guy who's going to steal 30 bags. And so if you have 2 or 3 of those players, you're going to win you're going to get 12 points right there in a rotisserie.
Okay,
league.
I have a question for you, Kasey Shienvold, because I've been in some drafts. Bobby Witt Jr. has been getting drafted. Guess what round he gets drafted in?
Probably the first, maybe the second at worst.
Yeah, he gets drafted very early.
That is too high.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think the second
Dan
round
Ratner.
is too high. I don't think 30-30 is too high.
It's not necessarily too high, but that's the upside.
But that's why it's but Ross, that's why I agree with you that he has to go on that bust list.
I mean, he has to where he's drafted. His numbers better be there. Corey Seager's not being drafted in the first 3 rounds. He's not.
All it takes is one soft tissue injury to his legs, and he doesn't.
Oh, that's any player. I mean, if
no,
Dan
but I'm
Ratner's
saying that
playing
somebody whose game
basketball
is
and he gets hurt,
predicated
I
on
mean,
speed. No, I'm not saying enough to put him on the IL, but enough to make it so he's not. They're like, we're not going to have him steal bags. And all of a sudden, he's below Xander Bogaerts.
162 games. You know he's going to have some nicks in cracks around his body. So come on.
So anybody else we need to mention for shortstop? We're going to wrap up shortly, but who do
Ernie Banks?
Look, I have him in my top 10, and I think they call him the unicorn because he's such a freak with his size and speed and power. But O'Neal Cruz has to be listed as a bust potential too.
Wow.
Because
Ross mentioned why.
Because same exact reason as Bobby Witt, I think. Like he strikes out 30% of the time.
He has the Bobby Witt problem, but he's also on the Pirates.
Right,
But
yeah,
remember,
he's in
O'Neal
a
Cruz
terrible
is not
spot.
being drafted in the first 8 rounds. He's not.
That's true.
But
true.
I'm just saying, like somebody,
I mean,
but we're all putting him as one of the higher ceilings. With that means he has, but I also think he has a lower floor than a lot.
Who do they have? Jeremy Pena, not Jeremy
Piven,
not Willie Mo Pena,
not Willie Mo Pena,
Not
but
Carlos
Jeremy
Pena.
Pena. Jeremy Pena. Oh, you guys are messing me up. Or would you rather have O'Neal Cruz?
Jeremy Pena.
I'd rather have Jeremy Pena, I think, for safe for this.
And where do you think Jeremy Pena is being drafted in leagues right now? What round?
10th.
12th. Yeah. Okay.
Close
10th?
Enough.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that range.
10 and 12. Yes.
No, I mean Jeremy Pena he's a value pick because
exactly
he could put up great numbers.
I would be willing to bet he has probably top 6 or 7 numbers at the end of the year. 300 batting average, 30 home runs. Probably going to drive in or score, at least drive in or score in one of them 100 runs, because that lineup is sick. And Houston is a great place for right-handed power hitters.
I had him ranked 10 coming in, but I bumped him up to 9 because Ross convinced me with the Pirate argument that O'Neal Cruz has got to go down.
How many 295-foot home runs get hit by?
Guys, I wish I could play softball there. Yeah, I wish. I wish. But
and I wish I could hit the ball more than
guys, again, just to clarify, there's a lot of shortstops. Don't pick a shortstop so early. Go after other positions before you go after the shortstop position, because Jeremy Pena is somebody you can pick up late and he'll have the same stats as some of these top tier guys.
I mean, even if I was in a keeper league and I had somebody like Francisco Lindor, certainly I would trade for some other position because he's older on top of it. Guys, it's been great talking to you about shortstop. Next week, same time, we're going to talk about outfielders. And outfielders, obviously, there's three outfield positions. You're really looking at your top 30 if you're trying to get a sense of what is the top 10. So we're going to rank a lot of outfielders, talk about a lot of sleepers, busts, value picks. And I like what we hit on today. I think a sleeper really should be somebody that really not that many people are talking about. A value pick should just be somebody who you can get late in the draft that's a good value. And a bust can be either somebody who you have to take so early that it's going to hurt you in value, or just somebody you think is going to be just flat out bad. Guys, thanks so much. Kasey, good to be here with you. Ross the Boss, fantastic being here with you as well.
Always.
And we look forward to seeing you the same time next week. That's Thursdays, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Looking forward to seeing you then.
Outfielders, Aaron Judge, #1, Kasey.
I think you're right.